Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode at General Geekery. With me, as always, is JD.
Hello.
Happy Halloween. Tonight's Halloween. Um, and
Happy Samhain and blessed harvest.
there you go. With us, special guest, Troy and John from Longbow. Thank you for joining us.
For having us.
We had Troy and John on the show to promote the Kickstarter for the Operation Longbow figures, the classic vintage style O-ring figures. Um, Boy, it's been about a couple of years now, I
I was
guess.
going to say, how long has it been since the Kickstarter was on?
Yeah, so the Kickstarter was June of 22, so it's been a little over 2 years on that. Yep.
And two of the figures have already been sent out, and you're on the brink of the rest of them, right?
Yeah. We're making good progress on all of them, but
It's
um,
awesome.
we've got one figure that we did as part of the Robo Skull Kickstarter, so that one's already made it out. And then, yep. And then for the actual Longbow Kickstarter, we just delivered our first figure to most folks last week. So those got here stateside, and then we went ahead and shipped those ahead of time to everybody that had those.
Awesome. And holy shit. I mean, it's always awesome when a Kickstarter comes to fruition, right? So you guys have got to be just like taking a huge, deep sigh of relief to see this finally coming to fruition.
Yeah, getting product to people is a big deal. That's a huge milestone for us, and it is a huge relief. Like everything's kind of behind. It's an action figure Kickstarter. They're always behind. Like it's a law of nature.
Yeah.
But you know, we just wanted to get whatever we could out to backers as soon as we could. That was kind of our goal. And we were very fortunate that this first figure that worked its way through was the one deluxe figure out of our assortment. So he's a little fancier than the others. He's got a little more gear, but we thought that was a nice way to kind of introduce the line and get something into people's hands until the rest of it can get there.
Fantastic.
Which I'm eagerly awaiting. I've read that comic twice. And I'm like, wait, who's coming in the first wave? I'm very excited. So,
Yeah, the for those that don't know what came to the Kickstarter backers, I actually have it right here. I have been waiting patiently to open that Kickstarter when we could have both Troy and John on the show. So first,
well, I
uh,
messaged Troy the other day. I'm like, oh, Brian's waiting to open Ghost until he's on the show. Troy messaged me back. He's like, how long do you think we should keep him waiting? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Let's have fun.
so we got patches. We got the Marauder Task Force Retro Ops patch. I found it pretty interesting because I remember that you guys were going to do patches. I found it pretty interesting that Hasbro's like, maybe we'll do patches with the Rattler uh HasLab project. I'm like, wonder where they got that one from. And
Imitation, sincerest form of flattery or something.
right.
So,
And then the Longbow logo there in a patch form. Also included was a 22-page comic book. Uh, this is as I understand it, the Kickstarter exclusive cover, and that there's a convention exclusive and just like a regular exclusive
Yep.
or a regular version.
Yep. So the crowdfunding exclusive, the one you've got there, that one's not available anymore. We've cut that off. There will be some of the standard cover available on Skeletron.com, or we bring them to shows. And then we did an exclusive cover last year for Assembly Required, the convention that Codename Iowa puts on. And
Yes.
I believe that they still have some copies of that cover in their online store.
Okay.
I have to check with Codename Iowa about that.
and
Gotcha.
I'm looking forward to future issues.
That's something we're actively working on. So we're in
Yeah,
the middle of the penciling stage right now on issue two. So
cool. Because the coolest thing about that comic is feels like reading kind of like the GI Joe run between like issue like 55 and like 75, where they're promoting all kinds of new Joe products, like the Star Viper, when he infiltrates the pit, or when Stalker and that crew get sent to the gulag, and there's a lot of infiltration and a lot of guys sneaking around doing stuff, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Plus, there's a few swears, and that's cool too. So it's like a PG rated comic. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. We were careful. We didn't go too hard into it, but we wanted it to be, really from the beginning. As far as kind of the tone with Longbow, we really wanted 80s action movie. Like that was
You
what we
got
wanted.
it. Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've gone for. So nothing real out there, maturity wise, but lots of fun, lots of action, lots of explosions.
And all of those things, fun, action, and explosions, can be found in the packaging art for the figure stands that come with it. I mean, the this I when I pulled this out of the box, I'm like, man, it looks like the accessory packs, the GI Joe accessory packs from back in the day. And JD was saying it reminded him of the pack rat packaging.
Oh, yeah.
They're like the little motorized things like that, where they all had like
Action packs.
different characters fighting each other on the mountain. I'm like, this is really cool.
We got the back of the card art there. It's fantastic. The chase with the figures and then the coming soon figures, and yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic. And then of course, like I said, I've been waiting. I've been saving it, and I have the ghost here.
Well, and just so everybody knows, those stands, they work for the Transformers crossover GI Joes. They work for the vintage Joes, and they work with the Strike Team Alpha from White Elephant Toys. So, um, I I I I stepped on one the other day with a figure. I didn't realize it was there. It's invisible, but I wasn't all right. I wasn't paying attention. But the figure's foot was on the stand, and I stepped on it, and the figure came off the stand. The peg off did not break off the stand, and the figure's foot is completely intact. So I don't. I mean, I don't know what kind of engineering sorcery you did there, but yeah, the stand completely separated from the figure, and all is well. So
That's what we want to hear, man.
Right.
So yeah, they stand up to careless adulting and play. So
There we go.
oh, look at that figure.
That is fantastic.
Um,
Definitely.
so how trippy is it that these characters that you all created, like you're seeing them in plastic, like they're real, like they're actual, they're not just like a fan fiction thing anymore. There's toys. How weird is that?
Yeah, I mean it's one thing to have like to customize. I mean, and have your stuff make customs, but to actually have production level figures.
Yeah. John, you wanna give your thoughts on that one first?
Sure. I'm old, so I've been doing this a long time. And this is just, it is, I feel like a kid at the state fair, like first time you see the big rides and stuff. That's how I feel right now. There was so much work and so much planning that went into this. And Troy and I have spent long nights discussing and arguing about what needs to happen and what we wanted to do and what we wanted out of it, and to see it happening now and see people get the figures. Man, I don't know. It feels great. It's inspiring, and you were talking about the comic book, and we've been working on the rest, more stories and more comics, and it's finally happened. Ghost is here, and people have him in hand, and all the work we put into making sure that it felt like a vintage figure and made it, we wanted it to be a certain way, and that's how it is. And yeah, it's taken longer than we wanted, but to have not cut corners and to not sacrifice what we really wanted, it paid off. And Ghost is
You can't rush perfection. So And the figures, I love that their hands are soft enough that I don't have to worry about breaking any thumbs. And it's just they're nice, they're solid, they feel like holding a vintage Joe, which honestly, some of the later stuff that use the O-ring molds, like the comic packs from the 2000s, holding one of those does not feel like holding a vintage figure, because they're made from much different plastic, and that's okay. But but I had some of the comic packs in my hand today, some of the comic pack figures, and I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't try playing with those guys. But Ghost, he stands up to play. So
Yeah, I absolutely love this. And JD was pointing it out to me because I hadn't noticed it because I had pretty much just set it aside so I wouldn't open it. The shield is lenticular.
and he can actually hide behind it. I love that.
Reflects that light. He's obscured behind it. Yeah.
That's so cool. Um,
That's I that is all John. That was John's idea. And he told me about it, and I didn't think we were going to be able to do it. I repeatedly, probably until he was sick of it, told him, okay, just be prepared because we're maybe not going to be able to pull that off, or this thing's not going to work that way. But
even the factory doubted.
Yep. He was absolutely right. That was all John.
Yeah, I remember one of the factory reps had made a comment like that's a camera trick. It really doesn't work that way. And I was like, magicians have been using this since the 60s to hide cards. And I showed him the card, like this is what it looks like. It's literally shaped like a playing card. And that's all we need. If we could cut it out of this material, it will hide the figure. And I think he was as excited as we were when it worked.
Yeah, that had to have been like pins and needles, just waiting to see if it was going to work, and then when it did, just be like,
well,
oh,
my favorite thing about it is it's a gimmick, but it's so subtle that it's just it was like it was built into the DNA of the figure, and I'm just like, I don't know if the stealth shield came first or if the character came first, but I'd be fine with the story going, hey, we designed this cool shield and made a character to go with it. Um, so
we really wanted him to kind of have a predator feel, This guy is a top-notch assassin, and Steel Web has a lot of technical gizmos and tricks up their sleeves, and since he is the first one, we really wanted to come out right up front and say this guy has a bag of tricks. He's got his backpack, it'll create a smoke screen, and we, the figures in the 90s, the GI Joes had tons of gimmicks, but they always just looked tacked on. So right. The gimmick that is integral to the design of the figure, and also just looks like the figure almost has to have it. That is a really cool feature. And you talk about playability and stuff like that. We kind of lose that when we get older and being collectors and things like that. But to actually be able to say that the shield has playability and it makes sense for the character because he's supposed to be able to hide, and so it just made sense. And when we talked about the shield and talked about different ways to do it and how we could make the lenticular design work, it was just like, this is going to be a really cool feature if it works because he holds the shield. His backpack holds the shield.
I was going to say, the backpack can hold all of the gear. Brian loves when the figure can stow all of its gear.
How does the backpack go onto the shield go onto the backpack then?
The triangle.
Yeah, okay, so you got the backpack on upside down, flip that around.
Oh, okay.
And then there's two little like triangular nubs that stick out.
Yeah.
And that
fit into the eye hole.
Yeah, the eye hole on the shield will clip onto those.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I love the fact that the mines come off of his backpack.
So the peg for those mines is the exact same size as a foot peg, so you can mine vehicles and play sets.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
Torbab.
That is that's it's just little things like that that I mean, I was like, I never would have thought to do that, but yeah, that is brilliant.
You know, to quote something that Michael from Retro Blasting often says, fans do the best work. So,
Yeah,
and if you guys don't mind, I'm going to open this. He's been in the package because I was saving him until I got the Robo Skull. But, well, since you guys are both going to be on the show, I'm like, well, I want something to open too. So he's getting opened early. But I'll show on the back of the card. He's got a file card for both Skeletron and the Wolf Trooper.
nice.
And then it's got this badass art up here. It just gets me all kinds of excited about that Robo Skull.
And those of you,
And Doug Hart's art is beautiful, but sacrifices must be made, packages must be opened. So
those of you that did miss the Kickstarter, Skeletron site this Saturday. At what time?
10 p.m. Eastern is when they're going to go on sale. Yep.
And the figures that will be available at that time will be.
So Ghost will be available individually.
Okay.
There will be a very, very limited number of what we're calling the Go Ring starter pack that has a Skeletron Wolf Trooper, a Skeletron figure, a Longbow Ghost figure, and then Longbow battle stands as a package.
Okay.
Those are limit one per person, and then they will also have their modern style on the Skeletron side. The modern style Jungle Wolf Trooper will be available then as well.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. So those
gotta plug our boys. So
absolutely, and we
Cool.
love the collaboration. We've had Ben on the show with the live for the Skeletron, and JD and I are both planning on setting our Robo Skull aside when it arrives and having Ben on the show when we unbox them. So really looking forward to doing that.
So he's got the same submachine gun as Ghost, but he's also got this badass little holdout pistol that looks like something out of a Timothy Zahn novel, and I dig that.
that stores on the back.
Oh, the pistol. Oh, yes, it does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Without the backpack, yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, look at that.
Oh, look at that!
It really is a holdout pistol.
And now, as somebody who's never owned a Palatoy Action Force figure or a Red Shadow, but who's been long since fascinated by them, I always liked the Red Wolf that came with the original Robo Skull, and so it's nice to have an O-ring version of it. Dude, this is awesome. And then, of course, she's got the balaclava head underneath, but I have very little intention of taking off this helmet. Look at this guy. Do not mess with this guy.
And something we did with that figure. So something that's unique about the original Red Wolf figure from Palatoy is it does not have neck articulation. The head doesn't move. It's in line with the body, right?
Like the old TIE fighter pilots, right?
Exactly. And that makes sense because Palatoy was also making Star Wars figures during that time period. So what we did was where that helmet on the Wolf Trooper has the little piece that comes down in front. If you kind of push it back, it sits. Yeah, that little tab there when it's on. If you push it back, it kind of seats into the collar. And if you do that, it prevents his neck from moving side to side. So if you push him forward, he has full movement. But if you push that head back, it kind of locks into place like that vintage figure and doesn't move.
Oh, yeah. Hey, cool. Look at that. Oh, that's cool. And again, feels solid. Feels just like holding a vintage Joe. But the wrists move and the hands are just soft enough that you're not going to break any thumbs. And he can hold his not lightsaber.
Breaking the thumbs. you can hit those hands with a blow dryer just for a minute, and that material, as it gets warmer, will soften up even more. So if you ever get to a point where you're worried about it, just put a little heat on it, and it'll be fine.
With his
You know,
laser
Brian
sword.
was talking earlier about the plastic, different plastics, and over 40 years, plastic has changed so much. And the materials that they make toys out of have become safer to be for children to have. But at the same time, the the actual chemical makeup of those plastics has become more elastic. So even what we would have thought of as, the GI Joe, a real American hero plastic is super brittle, and the older the figure is, the more we see that, because it's just a couple more years before a couple years longer that figure was made. So we really, we worked with the factory a lot on coming up with a material that felt like that material, but wasn't so brittle. So even the hard plastic is a little more flexible than what the old Joes would have been.
I love this figure.
It's awesome.
This is so cool. I've
Getting these out was.
What's that?
I said, what do you think the biggest hurdle to getting these out, to getting this produced was?
Boy, that's a good question. I guess, kind of on our end, the biggest thing is no matter what we had planned, everything took longer than we wanted. Whatever time we thought, okay, well, that's plenty of time to have that around. Something always came up where that was not now enough time to get it done. So that was probably the biggest hurdle for me. Getting factory times difficult. And you got to have everything ready to go before your time comes up. And if something's not quite ready, they move the next person along, and you kind of go not necessarily to the back of the line, but it prolongs things. If something,
you just move back a spot.
Yeah.
So it was like waiting an extra month for something that you thought was going to be done in June. Well, it's not going to be done until July or August
or September. That kind of stuff happens. And we were admittedly, when we started out, we didn't have all the sculpts ready to go because we didn't have the funding to do that. Sculpting's very expensive if it's done well. Good sculptors cost a lot. So we only had a couple of sculpts when we started the Kickstarter. And then we were, as soon as we were ready past that, then it was trying to get sculptors in place to finish, doing the rest of the line. And, if we had those sculpts ready to go in advance, we'd probably be months and months ahead of where we're at now. But that was just the reality of where we were at.
I was going to say some things just can't be helped, but honestly, I think it's worth the wait. So, if these two figures that I have now are any indication, which I have complete faith that it is, I have no problem waiting longer for the figures. They're spectacular.
Well, I will say
improvements with the factory from building this figure and Red Wolf, or the Wolf Trooper, so that they are getting honed in on the O-ring platform. So this next batch is going to go a lot quicker, and then the next batch will go even quicker because now, like Troy said, we've got our ducks in a row. We're ready for the next step as soon as they are. So they'll send us an email or message at 2 a.m. and say, "Hey, do you guys have this?" And the next day we send it, say, "Yeah, here it is. Go." So yeah, I think today we put up the pictures of the early production, straight out of production mold Lancer. And so that went out to Kickstarter so they could see that, and seeing it, knowing that was the first shot out of the mold, and it is so close right out of the mold. They're going to make some adjustments and do a couple of other things, but just seeing how much better that one is than the first Ghost that we ever saw, it really feels good because you can tell that now the factory has honed in on what this design is and what we are trying to get out there to the masses.
For anybody who, yeah, if you've got the email, go look for it in higher definition. But yeah, so you guys are happy with what you see there then.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely headed in the right direction. Like John said, there's a few things they're still going to address on that one. And we're fortunate the factory rep we're working with is very good. Because they catch stuff and kick it back before it ever comes to us sometimes.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, they don't show us stuff until they feel like they're getting pretty close. But they are getting better all the time. So they'll take that one back. They'll make a few more tweaks. We'll get a physical one at some point. We still don't have a Lancer yet, but we'll get a physical one in and we'll go through whatever revisions and get that ready for tooling. I mean, it's already tooled, but revised tooling.
And I'm sure that is such a fluid and dynamic process that you guys people are going to ask us to ask you for a timeline. And I guess this is such a fluid and dynamic thing that there's absolutely just no way to even like put a window on that.
Yeah. So what the factory's telling us right now is that they're expecting to do the next 6 figures, and we would have delivery on those in spring. So we don't have like a solid date, but we know we're on the schedule, which
Cool,
is
cool.
which is good. That's definitely forward progress. And now we just need to finish getting those tools revised and ready to go. And I should say, we have seen additional parts for other figures other than Lancer. We just saw them in a bag unassembled, so they're not very good for a Kickstarter update.
So, just out of curiosity, if you don't mind me at with the next 6 figures, which characters are they?
So the ones they're telling us right now are plain. And again, this is fluid. It is subject to change if something came. This
I'm curious more than anything else.
Lancer obviously is one of those. Volk, the Spetsnaz Trooper,
Okay.
Uptown, and the Krosny Ninja are the ones that they're trying to get ready for that next 6.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, my entire life, I didn't know that I needed a Russian ninja until you guys put that out there in the universe. And then when that funded, I'm like, you know what? My toy dreams are fulfilled. Russian ninja, the furry hat. I'm like, all right. And I'm like, you know what, Tom Clancy, you never did this, but you could have. I'm just saying.
Not get any more 80s than a Russian ninja. I mean,
no, it's straight out of Red Heat. I mean, I love this so much. So
we tried to do a mix, right? We tried to do some more like traditional military guys. We did the henchmen, we did a kind of some kind of sci-fi stuff, but we really like the Krosny Ninja. Like we needed a ninja, and we needed something that was out there, right?
You really did. You did.
Yeah.
And you succeeded.
And it's great because it doesn't lean into the sci-fi aspect. It's something that, and I've talked about this on other shows, but it's one of my favorite things. When you look at Ghost and you look at the Krosny Ninja, the development of those two things is totally the opposite. We poured over Ghost. We over designed it. We went through the technical aspect of it so that he could be this perfectly designed, technically accurate figure. The ninja was like almost a joke that Troy sketched up, and not much changed from that first sketch. It was just like, no, that is it. That there's nothing else to do. We just need to give him the correct Russian weapons and we're good. And that was a couple of days of discussion, and there he was.
And if I'm not mistaken, he's armed. He's armed with a hammer and
that
sickle,
was the last
right?
thing he released. So it's funny that they kind of bookend that way. Like one was just all of everything we had went into, and the other was just like a great idea that we just said like, that's the one. It's got to go. It has to. We have to put it in the Kickstarter.
I love that so much. It's like what Hasbro was doing in 1986. Here's a Techno Viper, and here's Raptor. They're two complete. They don't even belong in the same toy line, but there it is.
And those that didn't back the Kickstarter, figures will be available at some point through your store. Yes.
Yes. Yep. So everything will be available except for the Adapt Trooper in the research facility gear. That was our so that one is the only one that won't be available later. Right now, we don't have a store of our own, so our friends at Skeletron are keeping them listed. Eventually, that will change, but for the time being, yeah, keep an eye on Skeletron, keep an eye on our social media. After stuff comes in, it'll be just like we did with Ghost. We're gonna send it out to backers first. We're gonna give it a couple of weeks, make sure backers have a chance to get them and get them in hand. Most of our international backers are getting Ghost this week, so we feel like most of them will have it before we post it for everybody else. So we just want to make sure the backers get it first.
Absolutely. And I think that just kind of goes without saying. But I, regardless of any Kickstarter I've ever seen, people are coming into this late, they didn't see it, or hesitated to back it, or didn't have the money at the time, or for whatever reason didn't get in on the Kickstarter, and they're like, "Oh man, I gotta have me one of those. How do I get that?" So it sounds like in the future, short term, will be you'll these figures will be available through Skeletron's site, and then once you guys are all set, you'll have your own type of
Yeah.
your own fantastic.
So are you guys gonna army build your own stuff? Like, just curious.
Um, there are a couple of them I want to army build. There are a couple that I've got that I want to army build that are future waves that we don't have around yet. So you gotta remember, John and I are looking at this a lot further out than what other people have seen. So we
Oh well, yeah, of course. And I'm not gonna ask about future projects. I want to. I'm
But
not going to.
I am. So because people are going to want to know what comes next.
Yeah, is there anything you can tease?
Yes. So I will say this: when we initially developed this before the Kickstarter, we had a lot more figures planned, and we really scaled stuff back for the Kickstarter, and it's good that we did. In some ways, the fewer the less SKUs, right? The number of items you're working on, the easier this is. And it's really good that we did, because if we had wound up where we had kind of originally thought, we'd still be a long ways out from getting everything around. But we do have future figures planned. What we're planning on going forward is that we will do smaller waves of product, and try and get them around more often. That's the factory prefers that, because they can kind of then schedule us in between other things, and it just works out. So right now we're looking at doing waves of 4 that we would do going forward, and we've got the next couple of those planned, and pretty much ready to go. But until we've completed the Kickstarter stuff, we don't feel like we can be soliciting or pushing anything else.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think not biting off more than you can chew is I gotta give you guys hats off to that, because I've seen so many Kickstarters where it's like this, and this. I mean, that's the problem that Marauder John ran into with the Vietnam Kickstarter, was he had like 27 new figures, I think it was, something along those lines, and it just bogged down. And I mean, stuff will come to fruition. We've talked about that before. We had John on the show. But making smaller waves more frequently, I wholeheartedly applaud that, because that's going to make it affordable for everybody at that point in time. I'm not going to have to pick and choose. Well, I can only get 4 figures. Which 4 figures can I get? Well, I can get all 4 figures from this wave then.
Yeah.
So I think that on multiple levels, I think that is a brilliant marketing strategy. So
And there's a big expense when you first start and you're first buying tooling, right?
I
And
would imagine.
yeah. And going forward, the other luxury that we have is, we may do a wave that's redeco, or in a wave, two of the figures may be redecoed or retooled and two may be new. And we can kind of spread that out. And those things that take extra long in development time, we're not doing as many of those every time. Whereas when you're starting out from scratch, you're starting from the ground floor on everything you're doing. And there's this huge tooling expense on top of it that you got to work through to get all your sculpts ready and get stuff ready to go. But we've been very careful. There's, we reuse the Spetsnaz tool a lot in that initial Kickstarter, but you'll notice there are a number of other figures that we didn't reuse a lot of those parts. That's because we're planning on doing something different with those later on
Sweet.
down. Yeah.
Um, and
Pretty much just do that. I mean, if anybody that has shown how versatile Bucks can be, it's Joy Toy. Those guys have reused and reused parts over and over again, and I use them for customs, and it's amazing what just a little bit of paint will do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're creative about your deco, sometimes it's hard to tell when parts have been reused if you're really paying attention to it, and it's not just a palette swap where it's the same guy just in a different colorway. You can get a lot of length out of those tools. So but it's one of those things, you don't want to use the same thing all the time. But you can sprinkle it in there among new stuff, and it helps stretch that out a little, and like I said, speeds up the production process. So
focusing on small waves, we can give you things that we had wanted in the original Kickstarter, that some of those things were just repaints, redecos of figures, especially army builders. So, we want to balance the wave. So, there may be a redeco in there, but it's an army builder, or there may be a brand new figure in there that you didn't even know we were working on. In the Kickstarter, Troy was talking about, we had like 24 figures that we started with. And I can tell you right now, the Steel Web Heavy was not one of those figures. Okay. That was something we decided partway through the Kickstarter, like, hey, we've got this one in the design stage. Maybe that's what we need.
That's cool.
So, that's just a, little tidbit of information from Kickstarter world. But, in the middle of the Kickstarter, we realized, hey, we need something to kick this thing going. Everybody has a lag in the middle, and we wanted to be sure that that lag didn't include people not becoming interested in the Kickstarter anymore. So we wanted to keep it interesting. So it's like, this figure is badass, let's just throw it in there. And so we did. That's a tool that isn't used anywhere else. That one will be part of that last wave of figures that comes out.
Sweet.
Everything looks fantastic. I can't tell you how tickled I am to have backed this Kickstarter and to have it in hand. It's no, as a toy collector and customizer, there is nothing better than to have, like, be a plank owner on this and say, I helped fund this, and here it is. Here it is in hand and whole.
It's the first Kickstarter that I've ever gone all in, one of everything, because I could not, like, I'm looking and I'm like, no, I can't pick. No, I just, no, I need that guy. No, I need that guy. I definitely need that guy. And, it's funny because around the same time that the Kickstarter was going on, Marvel on Disney Plus had the Hawkeye series in time for Christmas, and you've got the tracksuit mafia guy, and then of course you get the tracksuit mafia in that show. So I remember watching as the Kickstarter was funding, and then like that got unlocked, and I saw a lot of comments like, "Oh, trust the bro, we're getting this figure now," and I'm like, "Oh God, yeah, what lovely timing that was." So I just need a moving van for him to drive. I'm just saying.
And having spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe, I absolutely love the tracksuit mafia. I mean, it's just like, yeah, it takes me back to being there. So
that was a really great happy accident, because that figure had been designed substantially before then. And we didn't know that was going to be coming out, but we did have a lot of
That's awesome. It's happenstance. I love it. That's
We talk
amazing.
about 80s and early 90s action movies, and the bad guy from what is it, Behind Enemy Lines, or the one with Owen Wilson,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, behind enemy lines. Yeah.
where the one of the main bad guys is a tracksuit guy, with his Adidas shoes, and
Yep.
yeah, the Hawkeye series had those guys, but we're still pulling from stuff from from when we were younger, movies that inspired this entire line.
Well,
Cool that it
I,
all come together at the same
it
time.
also makes me think of I was an avid watcher of The Sopranos, and most of those guys wore regular clothes, but every once in a while, Paulie Walnuts would spend 2 episodes in a tracksuit, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. Um, so that's good. That's a eureka, and I love it. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the rest of these figures.
And I think somebody had asked if you guys had planned on doing vehicles at some point in time.
We'd love to. And that is something we have actively looked into. It's just a matter of scaling up to that point. Vehicles are a substantial jump,
Investment, yeah.
jump up in investment. And we just want to make sure that we're solid and we're on a good foundation uh, before we get too far down that road. But yeah, we've looked at it. We've got a list of things we'd like to make someday. So that's there in the back of our minds for sure.
Yeah, we have shown some 3D models at some of the shows. We brought 3D models of some of the small vehicle or play sets that we've wanted to do. And of course, when we started this, we were all about getting Russians in this line. So there's always talk about we got to get something in there that's
A six-wheel vehicle that looks like it may or may not have operated in Sierra Gordo.
yeah.
Um, um, well, yeah, this is a very promising line, and I can't wait to see what else you've got in store for it. So,
When we get done with the second comic, I think that will show people where we're wanting to go with some of this stuff.
Nice.
It's a very well put together, cool chapter to the story. The artist is finishing layouts now, and
There you go. I was just
I'm
gonna,
really excited for that second issue to get out, because it really takes it you see a different side of this story and characters that aren't in the first one.
wait, um,
we're going to be able to get a hold of that comic when it's out then.
Yeah. We'll have that available either on Skeletron or on our site when we get that up and running. But yeah, it'll be available. So, and we're gonna do similar. We're gonna have some alternate covers. So we're working with Rod Wiggum again on an alternate cover. George Vega with an alternate cover, and Adam Riches is going to do an alternate cover for us. So.
Oh, nice. Okay.
For those that don't know, be sure and check the show notes. I will have links to Skeletron and your guys' social media. You guys have a Facebook page and a Instagram, correct?
We do. We've also got our website, and you can read the first issue of the comic on our website for free. That's out there as a free preview, so you can read that first issue. The second issue is not going to be free, but that first one is is free, just to kind of introduce you to the characters, get that started.
And if you like it enough, then you can buy an issue, because there's nothing like having a floppy comic in your actual hand. So, I had a tablet where I tried to read like graphic novels. I'm like, this is not the same as reading a comic book. I just, I'm analog in a digital world. So,
as any good drug dealer says, the first one's always free.
That's the idea.
There you go. And it is addictive, because I sat down to read it this afternoon. And I'm like, that was an enjoyable read.
Yeah, that was badass. Just out of curiosity, when you guys were putting the comic together, do you, as you're creating these characters, do you have in your mind the idea of an actor that you would have liked to have seen playing these parts? I'm just curious who you guys see as Lancer and who you guys would have seen as Volk. I mean, besides Dolph Lundgren, come on now, that's just obvious.
Yeah.
Um,
So for Lancer, we at least in my mind, when I initially drew Lancer up, yes, there was an actor in mind for Lancer. Um, but I'm not gonna say and get us in any trouble. Volk, on the other hand, there was not. When I drew Volk initially, I just needed a bad guy who, in my mind, was just like a badass, um, field commander, and we drew him up. And there was another character we were playing with at the time that'll be in the second issue of the comic that I had drawn them up together. And initially, Volk was not visually all that interesting. He's got a really simple uniform. And we went back and forth on him for a while before we decided to add the scar, to really kind of set him off. And we didn't have to do much else to him. We just had to give him that scar. And all of a sudden now he had all of this character that we hadn't had before. And then we had Rod Wiggum draw a new version of him based on the initial sketch. And Rod made his hair a little bit longer and did some different things. And in his drawing, and we loved it. So when that came back, we actually modified the design.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, we saw that and we were like, wow, that's kind of cool. So his hair's a little longer because it looks like he's been out in the field. He's not as clean cut because he's been out working. So we made that change. But yeah, some characters there are actors in mind. Some characters it's friends of ours that we have in mind. It just kind of depends. But whenever you're drawing anybody or sculpting anybody, you need to have something to aim at, be it a drawing or a picture of an actual person. Otherwise, you have this tendency where everybody you draw starts to become the same, right? Like you start to draw everybody the same. So
Yeah.
when I'm drawing, even if it's not based on somebody, I have to be very conscious of that. And sometimes I'll even composite and steal body parts from different people. Like I'll steal eyes from one person and a nose from somebody else to create something different. So
I could see Volk being played by like Sean Bean.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can see that. But that guarantees he dies in, like the third issue, though. I'm just saying.
Gonna die.
It's weird when Sean Bean lives through a thing. Um, um, I was watching that movie Pixels the other day on Netflix. Look, not a great movie, but it is a fun movie. But Sean Bean shows up as like the British military special ops guy, but he's got a real small part. He didn't even have time to die in that movie. So yet another one he made it through.
Yeah, every time I see that sculpt for that figure, I always think about the Golden Eye. In Golden Eye, how he had his hair was a little long, and
oh yeah, he had that black jumpsuit at the beginning of that. Yeah.
I see that almost.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it's never part of what I thought at first, but after the sculpt got done and just the way he looks, I was like, man, that would be so cool. And that's the thing, like, because again, all of this stuff, is from the 80s and early 90s, but those actors are climbing up in age, and I don't watch a lot of new stuff to like be like, oh, this new kid looks a lot like this guy would look. So I have thought about that. It's more fun just trying to I think it would be cool to hear what other people would think those guys, would play those guys once they have the figures in hand and it always drives me crazy, and it has since I was reading Wizard, but they would do the casting calls.
oh yeah, I was.
Casting calls.
Oh yeah,
X-Men before there was an X-Men movie.
they cast Patrick Stewart. It's like, huh, wow, cool.
I would never went with that, went with whatever they ended up doing. But but it was fun. And you would see like some people like pulling some actions out of obscurity, and you're like, wow, that guy would be pretty good at that. Or that girl does. Yeah, she's played that character a couple of times, so it would be fun to see a casting call once the couple more comics come out and people see where we're going and what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to that too. Jason, you want to introduce our guests to our what has become our trademark?
Yeah. Or yeah, it started off as the Colbert questionnaire, but we've changed a bunch of questions um to personalize it to our show a little bit. So, and this is the first time we'll have done it with two guests on. So we'll just Brian and I take turns asking the questions, and then you guys can just take turns answering the questions if you want. Um,
It's up to you.
I mean, if you guys are up for it, if not, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, we will start with what is the best sandwich?
You go first, John.
The best sandwich is if I was just going to pick and say like, hey, this is the sandwich I would eat like every day for the rest of my life, it would be a Reuben.
All right. Good choice. I like that.
All right. So let me tell you about the sandwich I obsess about. So,
Okay.
growing up and in college, there was this Philly steak sandwich restaurant I used to eat at called Chartreuse Caboose, and the it used to be a chain, and then the chain went away, and the local store in the town I went to college in stayed open after the rest of the chain had gone away, and I was a regular. I ate there every Wednesday. When my car pulled up, the family that owned it just started cooking my order.
Oh, that's cool.
And I loved it. And then they retired, and I was crushed. I used to dream about that sandwich, and I would wake up at night in a cold sweat sometimes.
Wow.
Long
Man,
story.
that was a good sandwich.
Yeah. And it wasn't anything real fancy, but I loved the combination. Turns out the guy that had originally started that business, the original chain, had gotten into the business of making like the preformed pucks that they use to make Philly steak sandwiches out of, like the frozen ones that they use at restaurants. And then he had opened up another chain that I had no idea existed, and they didn't have them where I lived. They were all east of where I lived in Nebraska and Iowa. And then like 5 or 6 years ago, I found it, and the sandwiches are the exact same. So it was like
Nice.
it had come back from the dead. So it's a Philly steak sandwich, but not Philly style. It's a chain out of Nebraska, and it's just meat and cheese. And
Are you not going to give them a shout out?
yeah. I will. It's Pepper Jack's Grill is the name of the new the new company. But you can ask John when I go to Assembly Required next week. I will stop every day on that trip, and I will have Pepper Jacks every day on that trip because I will be in that part of the country. So
You will bring one home with you and eat it cold, won't you?
uh-huh.
Um,
All right. Uh, what is one thing that you own that you should really throw out? As the pack rat, Troy, I know that is a very difficult and challenging question.
I have way too many action figures. I never get rid of anything. I have way too much stuff. However, I am bringing some of it to sell at Assembly Required. So if you're going to be in Iowa next week, come help me. Come help me get rid of some of that stuff.
yeah, you might get a sandwich out of it. I'm just saying.
Need that sandwich money.
Where is that?
That's in Des Moines. So that's what is it? It's Friday and Saturday. That's the 8th and the 9th of November. At Hy-Vee Hall in downtown Des Moines.
Okay. All my family, my mom's family is from Ames, so.
Oh, okay.
That's a show I'd like to make it to someday, but it's travel is difficult. So, but it is a show that like I follow it online. I would like to attend it someday.
John, how about you? What's one thing you really throw out?
I have spent this last year purging a lot of stuff. And most recently, I got rid of my 1970 Roadrunner. Uh, I spent my life looking for that car, and I realized a couple of months ago that it was doing me no good, uh, and I finally got rid of it. I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff this year, so it's a lot harder for me now because I've reduced so much of my inventory that it's kind of like, oh crap, I am at that stage where I have to pick the next thing to let go. So it's that's a pretty good question for me because I just recently got rid of one of those things that I didn't think I would get rid of. So
There you go. I think a 1970 Roadrunner is probably the best answer I've ever heard so far.
What is the scariest animal?
the scariest animal?
Mhm.
Oh, Troy's really thinking about this.
Does it have to be animals that are still alive?
No, no.
Then then it's got to be a T-Rex.
All right, we'll go with that.
You know, I don't think anybody should revive dinosaurs. We have six, almost seven movies telling us why we shouldn't do this. But if they're gonna do that, they really should just bring back the T-Rex. Just let it do. Man, it's like population control. Just saying. Um, um. But yeah, there's no restrictions. Whatever animal is scariest to you.
I'm just gonna go with camel spiders.
I'd agree with that, having seen one in person.
I've never seen one. I don't want to see one. I'm good.
I can't. I can't.
Fair enough. I, I respect that. Coffee. How do you take it?
I don't drink coffee. I get all of my caffeine from Coca-Cola. I start with one at 7:30 in the morning. That's how I start my day. But yeah, I don't do coffee.
That was me for years. I've only just recently scaled so much back on pop that I had one today. I'm like, it has a weird aftertaste. This didn't used to have an aftertaste, but yeah, I it used to be it used to be Coke or Pepsi. I didn't care all day long. So I do sympathize.
Yeah, with it, when it comes to soda, I have become so particular because I feel that in the last this I know this is gonna sound crazy, but I feel like in the last 8 years or so, the difference between a soda that you get at a fountain and a soda you get in the bottle is so different.
Oh, they're very different. Yeah. And
I drink
if you
Coke
get
Zero, when I drink Cokes, and I love Zero. I don't know why, or Piv Zero for some reason, but um, I love those two sodas and always have. But man, when I go somewhere and they've got like a freestyle and there's Coke Zero or Piv Zero in there, that I will get that every time. I don't care. But I will pass it up at the gas station. Like I won't get a Coke in a bottle hardly ever anymore, just because they already taste flat. You know.
well, it's like if you get used to drinking it out of the plastic bottle and you get a can of it, and it's like, I'm pretty sure I can taste the can. I
Yeah,
could
even
be
if you
wrong,
pour it
but
in a
I'm pretty
glass,
sure I'm
it's
tasting
different.
aluminum here.
But I like I will drink coffee black, but I really like it with I just like it with cream and some sort of sweetener in it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'll eat it. Just dump a bunch of sugar in it, and I will drink it. So
I do it that way so that if I decide to have hot tea, I can just have the same stuff right there on the counter. Like it can be hot tea, cream sugar, coffee, cream sugar.
Alrighty.
um, have you ever asked someone for their autograph?
Yes.
And who was?
Um, Michael Rooker.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah. That guy's awesome.
I had him sign some Days of Thunder diecast. Uh,
Nice.
so Yeah,
Nice.
I've asked for autographs before.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've asked for several autographs. I think my favorite was a couple of years ago at AR having Ron Rudat sign. I have some of his old sketches of a figure that they never ended up making, that ended up becoming scrap iron. And
Oh, the mountain climber guy. Yeah, I like that character. Yeah.
I've got a set of his colorways that he did with a marker over copies, and so a couple of pieces of those are pretty original. Like you could tell it's the very first copy he did because it's so clean. And of those is the one that's in Dan Klingensmith's book, and then there's also the one that actually got approved. A lot of people don't realize this. The one that Dan shows with the orange and green is not the one that got approved to move forward. So I had Ron sign that. For me, I always think about when I'm thinking about purging things, like that will be one of the last things I ever let go, because now it is personalized and has my name on it and the guy that drew it, and
That's
it's
awesome. I look at it at that point, it's kind of like it's like a priceless treasure, just yours.
yeah, yeah. So that's the one autograph that stands out in the last few years that I've asked for.
Excellent. All right. My next question is, let's see here. What do you think happens when we die?
Oh yeah, we got deep on this one. All right, no, we didn't. We stole this one from Colbert, and we didn't change it. I like hearing the variety of answers that we
I
get.
wondered if this was going to be one of the questions that made it through
Oh yeah,
on his list.
oh yeah.
You want me to go
Yeah,
for
it's a tough one to answer on the
Go
spot.
for it,
So
okay, so I grew up in a fairly religious household. My father was a preacher and a carpenter. Um, many spirited conversations when I tried to convince him that Jesus wasn't actually a carpenter. He was a boat builder and a repairman, and that's why his friends were all fishermen.
I can imagine how those conversations went. I've had many of the same conversations with
Because
my
I,
father.
I was a boat builder, for 30 years, and I like to tell people I'm pretty sure Jesus was a boat builder. But over the years, I kind of gathered this feeling that there was a universal power, and that everything everything kind of just goes into the universe, and it's hard for me to pin down how things are going to go. A lot of people believe in reincarnation. A lot of people believe there's nothing. Uh, I hate to think that there's nothing. That seems so nihilistic.
Me too. I find it I find it creates conflict within me. It's like, if there's truly nothing after we're gone, what are we doing this for?
Yeah,
Just, you know.
and when you do think about it that way, it puts a lot more internal pressure on you about legacy, you know, and what you leave behind to the people you love and the people you know. You know,
And the people that you don't like.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's some people I don't like that I would love the thought that I could come back as a ghost and just mess with them every day. You know, knock their drink off the counter, while they're watching TV in a scary movie, and just suddenly their drink falls on the floor. That sounds pretty cool to me, but somehow I don't think it'll turn out that way. So I'm very open about what happens, um, but I'm pretty sure that no matter what, I don't want to be buried in the ground. I would rather be cremated. I don't know why, but over the years of going to funerals and seeing, people close to me pass, it just, I don't know, it just seems like that does allow people that care to have a piece of you. Because like I said, I think over the last probably 5 years, legacy has become something that I have really thought a lot about, you know.
That makes sense.
So I'm gonna play it like there is nothing, and in this short time that I'm here, I am going to work on legacy.
All right.
Sweet. All right, Troy, what do you think?
So, what happens when we die? That's an interesting question. I guess for me, ultimately, God's going to decide what happens for me when I die. Um, what happens after that? I have kind of a weird experience with death. So something that a lot of people don't know is that for a year and a half, almost 2 years, I had a job and I designed headstones. Um, so I,
Really?
yeah, so I was exposed to a lot of different beliefs and things as part of that.
That's
But
cool.
I always tell everybody it was the most. Uh, I have to be careful about how I say this. It was the weirdest industry I've ever worked in.
I
And
can
it
see that.
was yeah, it was weird, and it wasn't that it was bad. It wasn't. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but like the
It
way
opened your mind up to a lot of different things, I would
yeah,
imagine.
well, and just you had to be able to disconnect yourself from it to a certain extent, and everybody that worked in the shop had to like find outlets to deal with it because everything you did all day reminded you of death. And it could be difficult sometimes. And I remember from like a psychology standpoint, it was the weirdest group in the way that people kind of uh, released that, I guess. So that's a weird story that doesn't have anything to do with what actually happens when you die, but it definitely colored, I guess, the way that I
I'll say it certainly makes it
look at
a
things.
colorful answer. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
Having been a paramedic for almost 25 years, I can relate to that.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, let's see. What is your favorite action movie?
Oh, that's tough. Because
Sounds like
Yeah, it is.
we put together like a whole list when we were doing the comic for the publisher that we were working with because their editor was helping us or one of their guys was helping us write and really put together the script for us because we don't write comics. Like we knew what we wanted to do plot wise, but he helped us really build it into a book. And we gave a list, and that list had like 2 dozen movies on it and books and comic books and things. So that's hard to say. If we're talking like just pure action,
I mean,
probably
yeah,
probably
action, drama, whatever,
just
anything.
pure action. I'm going to go with Predator um, because it's adrenaline the whole way through, and it at its most purest, it is action.
When I was a kid, I had two VHS tapes that I wore out completely by watching them over 100 times each. And it was Red Dawn and Terminator.
I
I have a very soft spot in my heart for Predator, but if I had to pick one movie that I would watch anytime and watch it all the way through, not just my favorite pieces of it, it's Aliens.
I all right. I like those
I
choices.
think it's a
Game over, man. Game
everything
over.
that was great about Terminator and Predator, that movie has it in it. And you've got a villain that is there is no way to sympathize with. It is
No.
total fear. There is not very many creatures in the galaxy that are more uh, fearful than the xenomorph, and maybe the aliens in Pitch Black, but but there's something about the xenomorphs being able to be so big and so quiet at the same time, and just so absolutely deadly. And then you've got this group of badass Marines that think they've seen everything, a lot like Predator. These guys have seen everything. So it takes those pieces, and then James Cameron's ability to take something like he did in Terminator and make that into something like Aliens and totally change what the franchise meant, totally change everything to make this awesome sci-fi action movie. And I just, I don't know. It's one of those movies I can watch whether it's the director's cut or not. If I'm flipping through the TV and I see it, I almost always stop and watch a little bit of it. I just absolutely love that movie.
Fantastic answers. I like all of those. What is your favorite smell?
You go first, John.
My favorite smell is, this sounds insane. I cannot believe I'm going to say this. But my favorite smell is the smell of opening a brand new toy that is sealed well. And it opens up, and you know that smell should be probably offensive to you. Maybe it's going to someday kill you. They're going to say like, hey, the carcinogens from sniffing sideshow boxes all these years, they finally caught up with you, buddy, and you have stage 3 liver cirrhosis or whatever. And I'm going to be like, it was worth every fucking stormtrooper I opened. It was worth it. It was worth it to open that box and smell that plastic. I'll do it. I'll do it tomorrow morning. I'm going to order something right now, and I'm going to do it tomorrow morning, knowing I only have like 4 months to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you should say that because I've been the next room over, I've been putting all of my loose action figures up on display, and I've been keeping them in Plano tackle boxes. And I finally got to the bottom of this. I mean, you can see the stack of Plano tackle boxes behind me.
Jesus.
I have some stacks like that too.
I finally got to the bottom of that stack today, and those haven't been opened probably in 10 or 12 years. So when I opened that, it just like off gassed. I'm like, oh man, it's like a brand new toy in here.
And I know that's a weird thing to say, like, because of all the good things, like, a fresh caramel macchiato, or, the smell of certain tobaccos, I mean, there's all kinds of great smells, but that is one smell that gives me absolute joy every time I smell.
100%.
Freeing a toy from its plastic uh incarceration is a special experience.
It is. It is. Some of it's tactile, but that part of it, the smell for me is I love that. I love that smell.
I think that's
Brought to
probably
you by the petroleum industries of the United States of America.
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily my favorite smell, but the smell that kind of stands out that I like, and this is weird, is I like the smell of cigarette smoke when I walk past the smokers lounge at the airport. I don't like it for very long, but just for a split second. And I remember when I was a little kid, like 6 years old, we had gone to Las Vegas, and back in the '80s, like all of those casinos were like hazy with smoke, right? Like everything was saturated in smoke. And when I smell that, when I walk past that smokers lounge at the airport, just for a split second, it's one of those smells that triggers one of those core memories, and it's like I'm right back there just for a split second. And I don't want to smell it for very long because I dislike it, after a minute. But for that one split second when I first smell it, it sets off that thing in my brain. So that's, I know that's kind of weird, but
No, I get it. There's a meme that I saw a couple weeks ago that it was like a it was like a Polaroid of like an old, like a early '80s living room, brown, floral furniture, brown paneling on the walls, that that brown carpet that has 8 different shades of brown on it, and it says the caption above the picture says, "They say you can't smell a photograph," and all the responses are all, "Yeah, I see the ashtrays on those tables." It, that you know, it's kind of funny because anytime I watch anything on TV from that was made a long time ago, where it's like everybody's smoking, I'm like, just there's so much less of it, and it's away from things because like back in the 70s, the 80s, nobody cared about any of that shit. Everybody in the office was smoking. And it's weird because
Airplanes.
it's so different now. But
Every table at McDonald's had an ashtray. Like I
Um,
vividly remember that.
yeah, with the McDonald's logo
Yeah.
embossed at the bottom of it.
I remember those. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Funny how
well,
many, I think everybody that has been on the show at some point in time, when they answer, they say, "This is gonna sound weird."
Well, I mean, like I said, there's lots of good smells, like frying bacon
Yeah.
or, like fresh cinnamon rolls smell delicious. Almond, things made with almond paste when they come out of the oven, like a pastry. Those are all great smells. But to say what your favorite smell is, like I instantly think, what smell brings me instant joy? And that's the smell.
well, that's simply something that I had never considered because you've got your favorite scents, but there's the gratification that comes with opening that package that I've never thought about it in a sensory in the terms of sensory input before, but I like it. I dig it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, conversely, the next question is your least favorite smell.
Hmm. Probably sewer gas.
Yeah. Okay. I can understand that.
Yeah, that's unpleasant, especially in the summertime. You come out of the house and smell the sewer gas. It's like, no, you know what? I want to go back inside now.
Uh, okay, this is graphic. But I'm gonna go because there's a couple of things I do not like, and as a former smoker, like the smell of smoke on your clothes sucks. And people that smoke don't realize how strong that is. Even if you go outside, smoke, wash your hands, you still smell like that. That sucks. But one smell that drives me crazy is the smell after someone else poops in a public restroom. That it's not the poop smell, it's that stank, that kind of lingers. And you're just like, man, I hate that when I smell like that, but having it smell somebody else's is just
Man, what did that guy have for
no,
lunch?
just no. I can't do it. It's my least like if I walk into a bathroom and somebody's just dropped one, that's okay. But if I walk in and that other smells lingering, we'll go back outside and get a drink and wait 5 minutes. Like
Go find the other bathroom.
I'm not doing it. I'll walk all the way across the plant.
One of my first jobs at Walmart when I was
Yeah, walk into like the gas station bathroom after you got the key from the but it's been locked the whole time between uses, and it's like, oh god, it's still in here. Oh my god.
Here, man.
yeah, you can smell the last. You can smell what restaurants the last five people have been in.
Yeah.
All
Like,
right.
good God, man. Somebody took advantage of the Chipotle special.
What was your first concert?
All right, I'll go first. Jimmy Buffett at Fiddler's Green.
Okay. My first concert.
Fiddler's Green. That sounds like a fun place. I've never been there, but I like the name of it.
That was where my first concert was as well.
I am trying to remember what the first actual concert I went to was. Um, my lord, the 80s were like a blur. I think the first band I really saw live And, you know, it's hard to say like a concert versus seeing somebody live, you know. Let me think about that. I think it was Chicago. It was the first actual concert that I went to.
Nice.
Can't tell you how many times I saw Def Leppard and I saw the Rainmakers in Kansas City. I saw them a lot, them and even Tech Nine. You know, back in the day, Kansas City would have shows with those two bands, you know, with Tech Nine and the Rainmakers all the time. So it was really easy to go to a show and they would be at the show, even if they weren't the main event, they would just like show up. And I've been at a bar one time in Warsaw, Missouri, where Ted Nugent was deer hunting in Warsaw. And he played a couple of songs live at the bar just after everybody figured out who he was. And like he didn't know what they were talking about, then got up there and played some acoustic sets. So, you know, I've seen some pretty cool live performances, but I think the first concert I ever went to was a Chicago show, and it was one of those at a venue where there was a lot of grass lawn seating, you know.
Was it a Saturday in the park?
Yeah. It was kind of like a Saturday in the park, yeah.
Nice. All right, let's see. Soda or pop? There's only one right answer to this.
I
So-
hate this question. I live in Missouri, and I grew up in the west side of Missouri, and it's pop. But going to the east side of Missouri, everybody said soda.
No.
And so sometimes, depending if I'm in mixed company, I'll just say soda pop so I don't piss anybody off.
All right, I can support that.
But I usually say soda now, and I think it's because for a long time, when I was a little kid, I used to love Alka-Seltzer. And I didn't know you could actually get water like that. Like I thought that was just the magic of Alka-Seltzer. And then I was like 10 years old.
Flop, flop, fizz, fizz.
It's like 10 years old, and we were at I lived in a town that had like an old style soda jerk in a pharmacy. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, this was late 70s. This place was still around. That was their gimmick. And I saw somebody order a soda water. And I asked my mom, I said, what is that? She said, it's just water with bubbles. And I was like Alka-Seltzer? And I tried one, and like I'm always a sucker for a soda water now. So I think because I always called it soda water because that's what they called it, that just became part of my colloquial, you know, language.
All right, fair enough.
Troy?
So when I was a kid, I used to say pop, but I taught myself to say soda. So I go soda now.
So you taught yourself to be wrong. All right, that's cool. We all make choices in life.
And it's funny because JD, you say that because you probably know that there is actually a history why each one of those words are used. And
Oh yeah,
each one has a correctness to it, like the soda water, the soda fountain. Like that was the way that those things were marketed to sound more upscale than saying pop, you know. And
yeah.
pop,
There's something down home about pop that my brain just
it is.
registers.
Like I know when like if I go to my mom's place, I always say pop. It's just I just change whatever language to be wherever I'm at. You know, if I go to a restaurant, and like that day in St. Louis, the lady's like, "Do you want a soda?" What? So like a soda water? And the lady that we were with, she said, "It's pop." Oh, well, yeah, I want a soda. What do you got? You know, I'll have a Coke. Is Pepsi okay? Did I say Pepsi? I said Coke. But yeah, just bring me a cola. I didn't know it's going to be so difficult.
Every once in a while, I go into a restaurant that has like RC Cola as like an option, and I'm like, well, now I just have to, just because they're still making it. I don't know who the audience for it is, but they're still making it.
There used to be a restaurant called Po Folks
I remember that. We used to live, when we lived down south at
and they
Columbus,
had,
Georgia. There was a po folks down there.
yeah, you sat in these wooden chairs while you waited to be seated, and they just had RC and whatever the root beer RC is, whichever one is attached to them, and they just had stacks. I think it was Dad's maybe, and they just had all RC products in the ice, in bottles and cans.
Nice. The old glass bottles that you needed a bottle open. None of this twist off crap nonsense. Um,
There's something about a Mexican Coca-Cola that's pretty good.
Yes. Yeah, I do like the Mexican Coca-Cola with the cane sugar. All right. What is the most used app on your phone?
Mine's the
Got to
mine's
average this out in my head because every day it's depending on what I've got going on, it's a different app that I constantly check.
Yeah, mine to my chagrin is the Facebook business app, because anytime anybody comments or does anything with the business, it pops up on my phone. So it's not that I want that to be my most used app. And it's not that I'm looking forward to it. Not that I'm, avoiding anybody, but that thing dings all the time.
it does go with the territory.
It
So.
does.
That's what Mark was saying with Gridiron last show, was that Instagram was just due to the work.
Yeah, we put up that post this afternoon about Ghost going on sale on Saturday night, and all afternoon my phone was just a constant ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, my messenger was popping today. Yeah, so I do a lot of communicating in Messenger. I know people that aren't even on Facebook that use the Messenger app. Probably on Messenger a lot, but I'm terrible with money, so I'm constantly checking my bank account. So I'm going to say my banking app is probably the one that I open the most times during the week to look at, to be like, can I afford that? Yeah, I think
Fair enough.
it's the purge.
What song plays when you walk on screen?
Space Lord.
All right, that's a good one.
Hell yeah.
Is that Monster Magnet?
Yeah.
Mine is probably Real American Hulk Hogan's theme song. That is.
Nice. Those are great answers. I like that. What number am I thinking of?
6.
14.
Nope.
All right. What we got?
Somebody's gonna get that. I am thinking of one number. I never change it. Someday we'll get that.
I don't ask that question simply because I would change it every time, but occasionally I might forget what I changed it to, and then I'd be like, "No, that's not right." Be like afterwards, be like, "Was that right?" Shit, I don't know.
Why did
Yeah,
I
this is why. Yeah, I have no idea what the number is he's thinking of, but this is why he handles that question.
Gets it right. I don't know what that prize is going to be, but there will be much fanfare when somebody gets that right, and it is a geek related number, so I am going to throw that hint out there. All right, JD, next question, sir.
Describe the rest of your life in 5 words.
We got deep again real quick.
Almost doesn't count really.
All right, there we go.
That's still just 4 words. So
Exclamation point, maybe that could be a word.
Punctuation on that.
Found, crushed by fallen toys.
That needs a special prize. We've got to start awarding prizes for the best answer somehow. I don't know how.
Yeah, that was.
It was either going to be that or it's not me, it's you.
I don't know.
Yeah, you get a Marvel no prize for that.
Think of something. We're gonna have to start awarding prizes to the best answer. Um, aisle or window seat?
What's it? What was the question?
Aisle or window seat?
Aisle seat, window seat, like on a plane
Oh,
or on a bus.
Aisle seating.
Depends how long the flight is. Short flight, I want the window. Long flight, I want the aisle.
all right. Good answer.
Nobody wants the middle seat. Nobody ever says the middle.
Yeah, nobody says like I love to be cozy. I'll always take that middle seat. I want to. If somebody does say that, will you guys email me because I want to fly with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you need a travel buddy. You need somebody that will take that middle seat. All right.
Uh, Best action figure.
You are allowed to say your own.
Man, that's a deep cut.
It is. Some of these sound, I mean, when you look at the list, some of these seem like, like best action movie. It's like, okay, that's not a hard question, but it
It
really
is a hard question. Although if anybody wants to answer with the Krasny Ninja, that's perfectly understandable.
is gonna say we will accept one of your figures as that.
Gosh, that is tough. I've owned so many action figures in my life. It's
You know
really
what? There's a cheat too. If you can't pick one figure, pick out like a. You can name a whole line if you need to, or like a like a multi-figure set or something.
Fit any easily, quite honestly,
No,
especially for someone like Troy.
Ooh. Uh, gosh. This is really tough, guys. This is by far the toughest question you have asked us.
yeah, this is one of Brian's, and I had trouble answering it too. Um,
um,
and and every time somebody else has answered it since we've been doing this, my answer changes every time. So, but yes, it is a tough question.
Yeah, we deliberately do not answer our own questions on each episode because they would change each time. So,
No, yeah, yeah, I would. I'd be accused of fudging the answers because yeah, they would.
um,
I am trying to think of the official name of this figure. So give me a second here.
fair enough.
mm, making me look bad, John. Um, so I'm okay. So I'm gonna go with um, 87 Falcon from GI Joe. And I'm going to go with that because it's one of my favorite GI Joes. Yep, that one right there. And that was the figure that we gave to our factory rep and said, "This is what you must meet." Right?
Nice, nice.
And like his accessories, like his paint apps are great. He looks military. The design's great, and the accessories are great, and they have little pieces that fit together, right? And there's a lot of figures that maybe do that bigger and better, but this is a real nice package where the knife fits in the little teeth on the backpack, the antenna fits in the backpack, like all of
If
it.
you don't lose the antenna,
Yeah, if you don't lose the antenna, so that that figure has always been one of my favorites. I don't know that it's absolutely the best one ever, but it's definitely like on my Mount Rushmore.
See, Hasbro, you could have done this in the classified line. Did you? No, no, you didn't. You could have. You didn't. Did you do it in the 25th anniversary line? No, no, you fucked that up too. I'm just saying, simplicity at its finest. It's action figure art, and they've never been able to top it or match
It is good. Okay, so probably my favorite all-time action figure is, I think it's a 1990 from the Action Man line, and it was called Mission Extreme. And that figure, from accessories, the design of the figure itself, the head sculpt, it had a really crappy modified Hall of Fame body where they put the joints in it and tried to super articulate it. That
it.
wasn't,
Oh, yeah.
but it was so playable. He came with a black jumpsuit, like almost a diver style suit, but he had this green jacket, and they did it in two different colorways. They did one that was like a brighter green, and then they did a dark green with mud on it. He had a rope that went around him. He had a cap with an earpiece that hung down. And they made like several accessories, like they made a camping set for him and a rock climbing accessory set for him. I thought that was one of the coolest ideas I had ever seen. I thought that set and it wasn't based on any particular character, but you could basically had a balaclava. You could dress him like a black, like ninja type character, or you could dress him as the Mission Extreme, like with the jacket and everything. He was just a cool figure, and I don't know. There were several. That is one of my favorite figures. Probably my second favorite along that line is also an Action Man figure, but it's the Assault Trooper from like 78 or 9. The desert one. I love that. I love that figure, and I always have. I have this like deep connection with 12-inch figures because to me they are the ultimate customizing figure. Like the only downside is that if you can't tailor your own clothes, you're stuck with whatever everybody else makes. The nice thing about a smaller scale is your imagination and your paintbrush, that's your limitation. Super sculpty and everything else, you can make anything you want. But I wasn't a kid when that set came out, but my son was into action figures. We were kind of sharing that love then. And that figure, that was just like,
You bought it for him so you could play with it, didn't you?
well, I'm going to tell you the truth, JD. I never used that excuse once in my life. Like,
I never have either. It seems like a convenient one for people to say, but me, I just never stopped buying action figures. And when my son started buying, and when my daughter started buying action figures, I'm like, oh, I can do this. So,
like back then, I enjoyed the hunt, and he really loved the X-Men TV show. So I loaded up on Toy Biz figures that I didn't care about, but he loved them. But GI Joes, Action Man, that stuff we played with all the time. No matter what, that stuff was always our connection. So and you could buy those at Walmart. It was really cool. But yeah, I think that figure, and I have several different versions of it in the basement in my museum. But that there are several figures in that Action Man line that GI Joe never really quite. Even when they did the what was it, the 2020 missions where they took gear that they already had and made some really cool figures. I love that line. I really do. There's a lot of stuff in that line that was really cool. But I've always just had a thing for the 12-inch stuff. As far as just taking an ultimate action figure. When it comes to smaller figures, the Micronauts Kronos figure is probably pretty high on that list.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
I could probably pick my favorite GI Joe or any of that as far as 3 3/4, and I've always loved 3 3/4 figures because they fit in your pocket. You can sneak them to school, all that kind of stuff. But
and we did.
we did.
Every
Yeah.
new
I would trade for stuff, and my dad would just shake his head. I'd come home with something, and he would be like, well, "What did you trade for that?" I just bought that last week. Like,
Yeah, but I wanted it more. Sorry.
no offense, I appreciate your effort, but you were not going to get this one. So yeah, but yeah, and just that Mission Extreme action, man. It's just like everything I think that a toy should be. The weapons were super durable. He had this super sweet shotgun with a removable magazine, and the magazines fit in his bandolier. He came with extra ones. It's just it was just cool. Everything about it. So,
All right. What is your favorite custom that you've done?
I used to do a lot of customs. So I was on the Joe Customs boards back in the day, and I used to pump out a lot, but it's been a long time. Um, I always really liked doing Tiger Force and Python Patrol redecos. I was right at the right age when those came out that I was into that. I know not all collectors love those, but I was at the right place for that, and I was at the right place for Street Fighter. I was 10 when the Street Fighter figures came out, so
Oh,
I
oh,
yeah,
when
I was
they
right in the right places for both of those. So I don't know that I have a favorite one, but I loved doing those.
my
Yeah.
favorite video game of all time, my favorite toy line of all time, in 1993, Hasbro brought them together into one toy line. I swear to God that at that moment when I walked into Kmart and I saw those Street Fighter branded with GI Joe, I swear to God, if I had said I I could have accused Hasbro if you created this toy line just for me, didn't you? You suave bastards.
Yeah.
It
And
was
I
right. It was so much in my wheelhouse. I
I first
loved
started
that.
Kmart too. Yeah, and it was. I walked in, I'm like, wow, this is, because I played the game, and it was like, wow, this is this is
Oh
right,
yeah.
right in my wheelhouse. Yep.
I didn't care that they were repaints. I didn't care what parts they used. I was so happy to have Street Fighter action figures that were meant to play with my Joes. I'm like, this is tailor made for me.
John, what you got there?
okay. My favorite one is probably one that I've done recently. Now, without saying too much, Mikey, my son, and I have been doing a small little YouTube show where we talk about how to customize classified figures.
Okay.
We are going to debut something at AR that's a pretty cool custom. So I can't show that, but this one I did recently. I love this. It's Ozone.
Is that Star Brigade Ozone
Yes.
Nice.
in his Washington Redskins color scheme? Um, I
One of our shows, we actually showed everybody how to take one of these Buzz Lightyear figures and turn it into this.
yeah, I love that. I made a
Several.
Star Brigade sci-fi out of a Buzz Lightyear, but you know what? I remember seeing that posted on Facebook, and I'm like, well, my sci-fi custom is just crying itself to sleep right now for being 3 times as lame as that. As like I'm like I thought it was a cool custom until I saw that Ozone. I'm like, well, fuck you, you suck. Um,
Yeah, so yeah, we're putting together something for the couple of coops brought show. And we're gonna push that a little harder and do a lot more interaction with people. People ask us a lot, like, when are you gonna do another show, and what's the future? Are you guys just gonna? Because the last show we did was 2.5 hours long, and I swear an hour of it was just bullshitting with people, and they were asking weird questions and trying to talk we talked to one person, I think, through a really hard time in their life while we were there. And I'm fine with that. But since we started doing that show, it was kind of it's one of those things where how can we take this to the next level? And so we are going to take it to the next level. And I think it's going to be a fun thing that people will buy into, because it's not like a full-time business or anything. It's just something that we're going to show you these parts, and we've got some parts that we've got, and this is what you can make.
Nice.
Cool.
And anybody
Cool.
can, that's the idea, is anybody, because classified figures are the ones that we chose were figures that are easy to get right now in less than $20. You could still grab the two main figures we used for the customs. And then we've added these parts. So yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. And Mikey is an excellent painter. He surpasses me on every level. It's so crazy the work that he does. In fact, the customs that I'm doing, he's doing the heads, because I can't do eyes any. I'm past that. I'm just admitting it now. Like, all right, bud, we're on the line here. We're close to time here for this show, and I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to send you the heads, because I can't. I'm going to send you the heads in the color palette, and you just go to town, because I can't do it. So yeah, and we are cutting it close, but we've got some stuff going that's pretty cool, and I think it's fun, because it's one of those things that he and I talked about years ago when we would go to conventions and stuff, and we would talk about, it'd be really cool if somebody had a channel or a show at that time, like a TV show, because this was before podcasts were really big. And I said it'd be cool if somebody had just a channel where they just showed normal people, just regular guys that wanted to change a figure, just showed them how to do it. Like, there is some magic and creativity to it. And sometimes it's hard to come up with a great idea, like cutting up those $13 Buzz Lightyear figures. You do a little work to them, and suddenly they make a really awesome Star Brigade team, and so we did a whole show on how to cut that figure up, how to break it apart, what parts to keep and what not to keep. And I love customizing, and I really had kind of let that part of what I love go, because basically Troy and I are customizing the
I was gonna say you're making custom figures for everybody to play with.
Yeah, so it tapping into that other side, just so that I could have with he and I, we've always been into this together, so it's kind of fun to have something that we have, and I was talking about legacy earlier, and I just thought, like, if there's one thing I could do by the end of this year is to make this a reality, then I'm going to do that. It's not like I say,
awesome.
As Troy will agree, getting into the toy business is not a money-making proposition. You have
not for the faint of heart either, I would imagine.
And Mikey does customs where he has to sometimes buy $30 or $40 to pay for one figure to make a custom for somebody.
Oh yeah.
And a couple of pieces that only come with the Mezco Destro, or you can only get that with this. And so
Mezco. Yeah, that's not a cheap outlet you found there.
So I mean, he does that for his side. That's his side job. So that's what he kind of does, and it just made sense for us to kind of join forces here. So yeah. So for one of the, like I said, one of our shows was us both taking a Buzz Lightyear set and a figure and a Destro and making a Star Brigade figure, and he did a payload. I had already done a payload a couple of years ago when that movie came out. And then those sets were on sale on Amazon for like $9.99, and I bought like 12 of them. And I thought, what? I'm not going to make 12 Star Brigade figures. So we should let's do a show. Let's do it so that's each one of the episodes. We've gotten more and more into that. Like, here's what we're going to start with. You do yours, and I'll do mine. And so that's how and it's fun. And people, he's got a pretty good audience, and nobody knows who I am. So I kind of piggyback onto that, and yeah. So yeah, he brought up the custom thing, and it was just like, yeah, there's something to that. And I had kind of forgotten how much fun that was. But he did that Falcon last year that won technical at AR with the camo, the Tiger Stripe camo. Troy, you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
6-inch, And I knew when I saw it, when he unwrapped it for me at his house when we were on our way to AR and I saw it, I was like, well, I might as well just hand over the keys to the kingdom because you have surpassed my abilities, sir. But no, that ozone is one of my favorite customs I put together.
As well it should be. Like I said, I thought my sci-fi custom was okay, and then I saw that I'm like, all right, sci-fi, you suck. I need to redo you. Somebody else raised the bar.
Well, until they do one, you know, who knows what our stuff will include. We both have talked about it. I've got pieces here to do a 90 version of sci-fi, so you never know.
Yeah, I never cared about sci-fi until version 2 came out. So
like skipping the green one and we're just gonna do the gray one. Here it is.
yeah, I support this. Sci-fi never did a thing for me until that second version came out. I'm like, oh shit, he's really cool.
But Flash was really my first GI Joe that I bought because I liked it. I bought Breaker because I thought he was supposed to be one of the action team guys. But I didn't know it was 1982. I didn't know.
I was gonna say a lot of those guys. They looked like they could have. They looked like spiritual successors to the adventure team anyway. So
yeah, so you know, that's why I bought him. I thought, oh, this is a pocket-sized version of the guys I have in Foot Locker, and and I was all in, and all of a sudden my Star Wars figures were obsolete because they couldn't bend their elbows. So everything was done after that. Like I had a couple of Chips figures and the Micronauts, but I was just like, wait, this is like sci-fi military. This is my thing. So Flash was the first one that I bought because I
mean, none of the Joes had lightsabers that slid out of their arms out of obnoxious slots though. So I'm just saying. It's such a terrible gimmick.
I don't know the armor figures, the star, whatever the star armor ones that
Star Brigade guy, yeah, the armor tech, yeah, with their limited articulation, and why the hell do Destro and Heavy Duty have Gatling guns for arms? Because if you look at the size of that Gatling gun arm, there's no way in hell that an actual arm is in there. And I'm just like, what
our
the shit?
Our story was that program was for people that got blew up and destroyed, and so
Robo Joe, yeah, they had to rebuild that guy.
Well, his face did, but everybody else on that team was somebody that got mangled by aliens, and they're like, "Well, we could put you in this suit." Oh, okay, I can still fight these guys and fight for the American dream in space. Yeah, stick a gun on my arm. I don't care, man. There's nothing there. It's just a nub. Put a gun on it. Give me a missile launcher that's like built into my bicep. I want to be all You don't think about the future when you make a deal like that.
No, that's probably true. And space is dangerous. You never know what's going to happen. And nobody can hear you scream. So
right. That's right. And they were going to do replicators anyway, so you could just say, "Oh, all those guys were just replicators." Heavy Duty still safe on the base at home.
There you go. All right.
A geek grail that something you'd like to buy or own or anything.
So I'll put out my thing I'm looking for.
Yeah, go for it.
I am in search of a carded Budo figure. So G.I. Joe Budo with the minifigure pack-in with the Duke minifigure specifically. That's the combo I want carded. That's the combo I got for Christmas in 1989. And so that's what I'm looking for carded.
I'm curious what Brian just got up to go get. I'm just curious.
I hope he has one, Troy.
Is that with the Duke minifigure?
Not.
Oh, so close.
Yes.
So close.
Open it. Open it.
Opening day.
Open it.
I'm looking for that, but with the little Duke.
Not have the mini.
I remember those minifigures. It drove me absolutely nuts that Buzzer was in there, but the other Dreadnoks weren't there. I was a weird kid. I got hung up on some strange things when I was a kid, but I got the Buzzer with one of my figures. I'm just like, well, he's useless without the other Dreadnoks. Um,
And you say carded Budo, I'm like one of three real American hero
open
figures.
it.
So, all right, John, what's your grail?
I was talking about that Action Man Assault Trooper. The first year that they did that, they had the figure in the package. The next year they just did the set of accessories. The artwork on the set of accessories is so cool, but to have a boxed version of that assault trooper is probably pretty close to, like I said, with all the purging I've done this year, like there are still things that I would spend money on. That is one of those things. If it was 3 3/4, it would be the Sears did their version of the Remco figures. I'm trying to think of he's all red, and I cannot remember his name. I see him on eBay. He's like $240. It's just like I can't do it. But yeah, Sears did that one line of them. Do you know which ones I'm talking about, Troy? They have the black cards.
Yeah. Commando Force is what the line is called, but you're talking about like the guy in the pilot gear with the red jumpsuit and the silver helmet.
Yeah, and in that series though, he came with this really badass rig, like that went over his shoulders and stuff. I can't remember what he's called, something like up or something like that. But that because of the stuff that I've kept, like the Remco stuff, I keep everything that is a mold of Airman John.
Okay.
When I was a kid, like I was a sucker for a figure named John.
Mhm.
Or a character named John for whatever reason. Paramedic, or what was that? What was that called? Emergency, that TV show. Chips,
Yep. Emergencies.
Hazard, oh, that guy's name's John. He's probably the coolest. His real name's John. So when Airman John came out, I was like, yeah, I got that Airman John. And they've done him in so many colorways and everything else. And that was kind of the last one they did. So that one is probably my 3 3/4 O-ring grail. I think. But no, that Action Man Assault Forces or Assault Trooper is one that I have. I had one of those when I was a kid, and that was a gift from somebody from England. And later on, she brought me Action Force versions of that figure, and I didn't care about boxes back then, but the art is so good on it. Greg Hughes knocked it out of the park. That was that line and the stuff he was doing in that line, and Bob tried to replicate it again for the the little figures. He wanted to homage all of Hughes' work. So there's a whole lot of history to that figure in that line. I think that it's cool. The box art's cool. The future forward idea of it, and yet he's carrying a spacey looking gun that was made in 1955. It's okay though because it looked cool and it was silver.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Second to the last question. This one we're still kind of on the fence about keeping because not everybody is a Doctor Who fan. Which is your Doctor, and is that also your favorite Doctor?
Assuming you're a Doctor Who fan.
David Tennant. And I've been watching Doctor Who since Tom Baker. So yeah, David Tennant I thought was like the relatable version.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris was right before that. I really loved the darkness of that one. But Tennant brought this almost like I mean, you got the idea that they were all new to it each time they transformed. It was supposed to be the same person, but it was like he was discovering what a doctor should be and could be. And I thought the writing in the time that he was there, I thought the writing was amazing, and they did so much to try to homage the other Doctor Who's, and it was so much I thought, and I know a lot of diehards don't feel this way necessarily, but I thought they were really trying to bring all of the Who fans that have their favorite doctors and wish Tom Baker was still the doctor, which isn't possible, but you know, so I thought Tennant brought something to it that no one else. I really think he re-energized that franchise.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
He was young and he was sharp, and David Tennant is actually a great guy, you know, in person, and he's funny, and but he brought like almost an innocence to the role, even though you know the doctor had done some really bad things. I mean, he was you know paying for those sins. You knew all that, but Tennant brought a side of it that I just thought was I just really enjoyed his time as doctor.
Yeah, I absolutely love that David Tennant, the Doctor. Yeah, Troy.
I am aware of what Doctor Who is, but it's
Joe's
very,
favorite character is the phone booth.
yeah, it seems very, very English to me.
Oh yeah, it doesn't get any more English than that. Fair enough.
Um, my my favorite nerdy sound effect is that gear grinding sound that the TARDIS makes. I love that sound. Um, because when I hear that sound on TV, it can only be one thing, and then the TARDIS shows up, and I just drool. So yeah, I get that.
I always liked Doctor Who when I was a kid. It was cerebral, you know, there was a lot more to it that I mean, I love sci-fi all around, and as an American kid growing up, like most of the sci-fi in the 70s, there's a lot of cheese, you know. So much just,
Space 1999.
you know, and Doctor Who just felt like at that time I didn't realize that you could take science fiction and actually, you know, ground it on Earth. And, you know, over the years, I've come to understand science fiction way, way more. And, you know, reading Asimov and
Yes.
Herbert and, you know, and all these guys that created these fantastic worlds, you know, these entire worlds, you know. But Doctor Who was kind of set in our world, and he was a traveler in our world, and it always felt like you were experiencing our world for the first time through his eyes. And I thought that was interesting, even though he's got these guys after him, and Daleks hardly seem very intimidating at all.
And I
They're
think
intimidating if the lasers start going or if there's a whole lot of them. But if you got like three or four, it's like
Yeah,
no.
they're basically just Roombas.
I think Tom Baker would be ecstatic to hear you say that because I've heard interviews with him where he has specifically said that they tried to make it cerebral, and I think he used that word. So
Back in the olden days, you know, PBS was, you know, mostly Sesame Street and the Electric Company and stuff like that. But if you stuck around, you catch some Doctor Who, and you'd be like, wow, what is this show? And you know, I came
If you
in.
were up late, you could watch Masterpiece Theater.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could always see that.
I
Uh,
didn't watch
the
it.
book, the fireplace book, fireside chat or whatever, where he's like
Oh
reading
yeah.
type and what. But Doctor Who, I mean, it was, and like I said at that time, I had someone in my life that was English, and she said, "Well, you might like this. You know, you should sit down and watch it." Okay, where's the laser guns? Well, he's got a screwdriver. No, what?
yeah,
No, no, what is this? And then after I watched it for a little while, I was like, "Oh, this is really interesting."
yeah, my wife
It
got
kind of changed my view on, you know, what science fiction could be, because, you know, it was I watched tons of those 50s movies where everybody had the silver spacesuits, and I have a very soft spot in my heart for those movies. But yeah, I so Doctor Who was kind of early on, and then when Eccleston came on, I started watching it again, and like I said, I was like, holy shit, this dude's dark.
yeah. I had Christopher
I'm just
Doctor Who custom a number of years ago, and he was super cool, and it's like uh, just like in this completely British accent, he says, "I see you've given me great pecs. I love it." So All right, JD has our last question.
Your favorite music soundtrack?
Transformers movie soundtrack. I mean,
You've got the touch.
I could pick like The Big Chill. You know, there's tons of movies that have great soundtracks, Guardians of the Galaxy, but just one that's like a lot of, cool. I honestly, and I know some geeks will agree with this, but I honestly feel like that opening song for the movie, Transformers the movie, is one of the best pieces of music ever written for a cartoon, period.
I don't think you can go wrong with any soundtrack that has Weird Al in it.
No, that's true.
Oh, this is a hard one because I collect movie soundtracks. So
You can
uh,
say Grease.
yeah, Transformers the movie is fantastic. And I own all of Stan Bush's discography because of it. I own all of his albums. But like there are so many great soundtracks from 80s movies. Like the Top Gun soundtrack is fantastic. Like everything on there is a banger. And um, but one of my favorites is actually a score. So not the soundtrack, but the score to Days of Thunder, which there's this whole story about how Jerry Bruckheimer got Hans Zimmer to come down to Florida while they were filming that movie. And for anybody that doesn't know, they filmed that movie in like 6 months down there and just crazy shooting schedule. And he had Hans Zimmer come down, and if I remember the story right, they told him that they were bringing him down to interview him to try and get him to sign on, and then they wouldn't let him leave, and they essentially like sequestered him in Florida to do this soundtrack, and it's got like a lot of weird. And that movie came out in 1990, so he was working on it in 89, and it's got a lot of weird synth, but a lot of like guitar in the background with like a really like echoey sound, like it's out over everything. And I love that soundtrack. And Hans Zimmer apparently doesn't much care for it because he only has bad memories of being held hostage. But
Fair enough. I
like
mean,
I loved that score for that movie, and for the longest time it was not available on CD. Only the soundtrack was, and the soundtrack's not bad. It's got Chicago on it. But it when I finally got that score, I was so excited. So I love that. But there's so many good soundtracks, especially on 80s movies and scores too. But there was just a lot of music, and they were really good about into things, right? Even when you think about TV, like Miami Vice, what was really different about it when it came on TV was there was like a licensed song for every episode, which was totally unheard of at the time, right? Um, but like every like there's an episode and it's got Phil Collins in the air tonight on it, and like that's and they licensed different songs that were out at the time for every episode, and it was a big deal at the time, and it was really important to have that in the 80s, that you had to have a great sound. So there's a lot to choose from there.
And that, gentleman, is the General Geekery questionnaire. Thank you for participating. I think it has definitely become one of the more interesting aspects of our show because it really lets really get to know people that way. I mean, just
yeah, it lets you know.
Off like real shallow, like what kind of ice cream do you like? And then all of a sudden it's like, what do you think of the existential end of existence?
actually,
We were just talking about chip and mint a few minutes ago, and now I'm trying to figure where my spirit goes when I die. Is the soul real? And now I'm probably gonna lie awake at night, like, did I answer that question correctly?
And then a few questions later, it's like your favorite toy. Well, shit, that's almost as hard as what the hell happens after we die.
I think
Well, it's clearly I
yeah, people have struggled more with what is the best action figure or the best action movie than they have with what happens after we die. And I absolutely love that aspect of this. And so, thank you to Stephen Colbert for putting the idea into our heads, and we have done our best and continue to try and add to it and to take away from it to make it our own, and to make it enjoyable for our guests as well. And I think everybody that's been on has had a blast doing it. So
Yeah, it's a really cool set.
so
So
um,
yes, thank you for that. I like getting in the guest heads a little bit. So
yeah, and it's like you said, it's not something that everybody does. It's we definitely want to ask all the questions all the other shows ask. When is this figure coming out? What are you going to do next? How do I get a hold of this? But at the
I'm
same,
glad we did that part first because now I'm still messed up about how things end.
yeah,
well, if you if you if you really if it really keeps you up tonight, I'm fine if you curse me in your whether you're asleep or awake. It's fine if you curse me for
It's
wherever
just
you are.
it's
It's all
funny, like a lot of the questions, like in the last year, I have been asking myself, and so it's just kind of funny. Like, as you asked about it, like the favorite action movie, and Troy and I both put together lists of what we thought like the perfect action movies that are what we want people to think about when they think about Longbow, and realize that those are our favorite action movies. So that's one of those things I was pretty prepared to answer.
and
when I answered that question, I was going back and forth between RoboCop or The Mummy from 1999. RoboCop or The Mummy from.
That's good.
I'm like, all right, you know what? For this show, RoboCop is number one. The Mummy is number two. Ask me next week, and it'll change. So
absolutely. And I think at some point in time, JD and I will have to do our own questionnaire again, since we've refined it, because we have changed it quite a bit since then.
yeah, we've changed a bunch of the questions. So, but
But I
but
think
yeah, I think
that's
that's all we got.
a killer episode. As always, gentlemen, thank you for being on the show. Uh, thank you so much for getting this Kickstarter to fruition.
Oh
Uh,
hell yes.
we appreciate everything that you have done for the community. This figure is amazing. I am beyond ecstatic to have this in my collection. Cannot wait to see what comes next from Operation Longbow. And again, thank you for being on the show. We would like to have you on again at some point in time, when more towards the general release of this stuff, and
Absolutely.
time that you guys want to be on to tip your wares. You let us know, and we will have you on anytime.
Sure.
As always, everybody, please do that fun social media stuff. Like, share, subscribe, comment below. Let us know what you're looking forward to from Callsign Longbow. Please. And as always, thanks for watching.
Thanks everybody. Good night.
Thank guys.
Thank you.